In our headlines on this Thursday afternoon, October 19th, here in South Korea. Following its summit with the US, Israel agrees to the flow of food, water and medicine to civilians located in the southern Gaza Strip from Egypt's Rafah crossing, but warns the supplies should not reach the Palestinian militant group Hamas. Meanwhile, Chinese President Xi Jinping and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin sit down on the sidelines of the Belt and Road Forum in Beijing to address issues of mutual concern while refraining from a joint public stance on the latest Israeli-Hamas conflict. And here on the local front, the Bank of Korea shares intentions to keep its benchmark interest rate steady at 3.5% for the sixth session in a row amid rampant external risk factors, including the fresh outbreak of violence in the Middle East. Talks between US President Joe Biden and his Israeli counterpart Benjamin Netanyahu earlier on Wednesday have led to an agreement for the flow of basic necessities, including food and water, to civilians in southern Gaza via Egypt's Rafah crossing. Our Park Gonu has the latest.
Following talks between U.S. President Joe Biden and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Wednesday, the Prime Minister's office announced it would not prevent aid from entering Gaza through its border with Egypt. The office stressed that relief should only reach civilians in Gaza, adding food, water, and medicine will be the only supplies allowed through. It also said it would maintain a blockade of humanitarian aid from Israel into Gaza until hostages being held by Hamas are released. Egypt announced on Thursday that it would allow sustainable passage for aid to cross through its border with Gaza, as hundreds of aid trucks have been waiting to go through. And despite a U.S. veto of a UN resolution condemning all violence against civilians in the war between Israel and Hamas, and urging humanitarian aid for Gaza, Biden followed up talks with Netanyahu with a pledge to support both Israel and Gaza. He said he is considering a supplementary request to Congress for some $100 billion for defense assistance, with some of those funds to be used for Israel. And he also said he would send around $100 million in humanitarian aid to Gaza. Regarding the deadly explosion at the Ali Arab hospital in Gaza on Tuesday, Biden said that it appears Israel was not responsible for the blast. According to a National Security Council spokesperson, the assessment that another Palestinian militant group caused the explosion was made based on data including intelligence, missile activity, and open-source video and images of the incident. Meanwhile, also on Wednesday, the U.S. Treasury Department announced sanctions against 9 individuals and 1 entity in places including Gaza, Sudan, and Qatar over suspicions they have links to Hamas. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen noted, the United States is taking swift and decisive action to target Hamas's financiers and facilitators, following its brutal and unconscionable massacre of Israeli civilians, including children. Park Gonu, Arirang News.
And the cross-border confrontation between Israeli forces and Palestinian militants and its callous consequences are fueling public protests in neighboring countries as well as hate crimes and threats of terrorism in Western Europe. Our Yoon reports.
Following the deadly blast on Tuesday night on a hospital in the Gaza Strip that killed nearly 500 people, a former Hamas leader called for a worldwide day of rage. And thousands of people have rallied in countries across the Middle East and North Africa to protest. On Wednesday, demonstrators gathered outside U.S. embassies. As the Jordanian government declared 3 days of mourning, thousands of people gathered outside the U.S. and Israeli embassies, where Islamic parties in the country called for a general strike. In the Lebanese capital Beirut, protesters clashed with security forces who used water cannons to disperse crowds close to the U.S. embassy. Overnight, demonstrations also took place in Turkey, Morocco, Libya, and Iran. Meanwhile, the conflict between Israel and Hamas is causing reverberations throughout Europe, from demonstrations to hate crimes and terrorist attacks. Early on Wednesday morning, 2 hooded men threw Molotov cocktails at a synagogue and a Jewish community center in central Berlin. Local police said there were no reports of injuries or damage.
They said this night they would try to burn the building. There were 2 Molotov cocktails thrown on the building at around 4 o'clock in the morning. So things got Nothing happened. The bottles apparently didn't reach the building.
German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, who is currently in Egypt after visiting Israel on Tuesday, condemned the attacks and said anti-Semitism has no place in Germany.
It is completely clear that we do not accept this and will never accept it when Jewish institutions are attacked, and that events and activities which turn violent or use anti-Semitic slogans will not be accepted.
Meanwhile, in France, several airports were evacuated on Wednesday after receiving emails containing threats of attack. And following Monday's deaths of 2 Swedish citizens in a stabbing in Brussels, the leaders of Belgium and Sweden met on Wednesday with the EU's chief executive to discuss the security gap in the bloc's management of migration and asylum. The attack in Brussels was allegedly carried out by a Tunisian national who was in the country illegally after an asylum application was rejected in 2020.
One specific dimension relates to individuals who are considered a security threat and have received a return order. Currently, they can be asked to leave voluntarily. We must urgently change this.
Von der Leyen said the bloc's next migration pact would help avoid such situations by allowing state authorities to more quickly deport foreigners who are deemed a threat to national security. Yoon, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, in China, President Xi Jinping has pledged to better support the growth of developing nations, claiming the effort will ensure broader prosperity. Our Ising has more on his remarks at the latest Belt and Road Forum.
During the opening of the third Belt and Road Forum for International Cooperation on Wednesday, Chinese President Xi Jinping emphasized the importance of building alliances between developing countries, adding that it's through such alliances that countries can prosper together.
Belt and Road cooperation is based on the belief that the flame runs high when everyone adds wood to the fire, and that mutual support can get us far. Such cooperation seeks to deliver a good life not only to people of just one country, but to people in other countries as well. It promotes connectivity, mutual benefit, common development, cooperation and win-win outcomes.
He also said that countries with rapid economic development must help underdeveloped partner countries and pledged that China will spare no effort in deepening cooperative partnership with other nations and realizing the modernization of each country. The Chinese leader also criticized Western countries and warned against decoupling from his country's economy, stressing that China stands against the unilateral sanctions it has faced over the years.
Ideological confrontation, geopolitical rivalry and bloc politics are not a choice for us. What we stand against are unilateral sanctions, economic coercion, and decoupling and supply chain disruption.
Meanwhile, as China and Russia have shared stances on international issues, there was speculation that a statement on a joint position on the Israel-Hamas armed conflict would be forthcoming, but none was released. However, after the meeting between President Xi Jinping and Russian President Vladimir Putin, Putin held a separate press conference where he described the recent deadly blast at a Gaza hospital as a catastrophe and stated that he did not want the conflict to worsen. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
At the United Nations, Seoul has condemned Beijing's reported repatriation of North Korean defectors, calling the forced return a, quote, grave human rights incident. The remarks to this end was shared by South Korea's ambassador to the UN, Hwang Jun-guk, during a session on Wednesday following claims by human rights groups that China last week had sent back some 600 North Koreans home after detentions in provinces of Jilin and Liaoning. Hwang also voiced much concern about the potential horrors to be faced by these North Koreans, including the death penalty. China and North Korea have yet to share their respective stances on the matter. Here on the local front, President Yoon Suk-yeol has tapped a former commander of the Capital Defense Command as the country's new Vice Defense Minister. The top office says newly appointed Vice Defense Minister Kim Seon-ho will take on his role starting this coming Friday. Kim is a graduate of the Korea Military Academy and a retired Army Lieutenant General. Since leaving the Army in 2020, he established a defense strategy forum and has worked in an advisory capacity in defense-related fields. Thursday's appointment comes 12 days after President Yoon named Shin Won-sik as Defense Minister. And President Yoon Suk-yeol is rallying for reform in the country's health system to allow for adequate access to quality care nationwide. Presiding over a strategy meeting on essential medical innovation at Chungbuk National University earlier on this Thursday, President Yoon claimed boosting the pool of medical workers is essential amid staff shortages in non-urban areas as the country seeks to better accommodate a super-aging society. That being said, he proposed nurturing national university hospitals as the core providers of essential health services under the jurisdiction of the Health Ministry. Also, as part of efforts to encourage more medical workers to focus on essential health services, including obstetrics and pediatrics, the President called for enhanced training programs, legal safety nets for the medical arena, among other measures. Seoul Central Bank has decided to hold steady its benchmark interest rate for the sixth session in a row at 3.5%. Our correspondent Shin Ha-young has more.
The Bank of Korea again held the country's key interest rate steady at 3.5%. The decision was announced on Thursday following a Monetary Policy Committee meeting.
Uncertainty over inflation and economic growth increased due to prolonged monetary tightening in major countries and rising geopolitical risks. It is expected that the easing of the inflation rate will be more gradual than initially expected. Considering such factors, we have decided to keep a tightened monetary policy. The Board of Governors voted unanimously to maintain the current tightened stance.
This is the sixth consecutive time that the BOK has decided to keep the rate unchanged. The base rate has been held at 3.5% since February, following 10 consecutive rate hikes aimed at taming inflation beginning in August 2021. Analysts say uncertainty about the economic recovery was the main factor behind the decision, as aggressive rate hikes could further dampen economic growth. While there are signs of a rebound in exports, a downturn in consumer spending is raising uncertainty about the country's economic recovery. Exports in the third quarter decreased by 9.8% on-year, the lowest decline since the fourth quarter of last year, when exports began to decline on a quarterly basis. Also, Statistics Korea say consumption in August fell from the month before, the second consecutive on-month decline. Now, according to some experts, the chance of further rate increases is low. International credit rating agency Fitch Ratings on Tuesday said that it believes the BOK is at the end of its cycle of hikes. However, inflationary pressure, soaring household debt, and the exchange rate market are factors hindering the BOK from cutting rates. Earlier this month, the South Korean won depreciated to an 11-month low against the US dollar. The BOK on Thursday said upside risks to inflation have increased due to the effects of higher global oil prices amid conflict in the Middle East. Meanwhile, on the back of the BOK's latest decision, the rate gap between South Korea and the US still stands at 2 percentage points. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
In other news, foreign investors sold almost 2 trillion won, that is, or roughly $1.3 billion worth of shares listed on the Korean stock market in September. Now, this marks the second month in a row that foreign investors have been net sellers of local stocks. Also, according to the Financial Supervisory Service on this Thursday, foreign investors held some $490 billion worth of stocks, accounting for about 26.7% of the market capitalization as of the end of September. Around 70% of the net sell-off was in the Kospi, while the rest was in the tech-heavy Kosdaq. Elsewhere, a Polish company has hired what it claims is the world's first AI robot CEO. Now, this comes as the general response to and prospects of broader AI adoption in the workforce remain uncertain. Our Iani explains.
A drinks company in Poland has recently appointed a humanoid robot as an experimental CEO. Her name is Mika, an AI robot powered by ChatGPT-style large language models. Her roles include conducting team meetings, verifying potential client lists, and providing well-reasoned decisions to the board of directors.
Well, as a robot CEO, I don't really have weekends. I'm always on, 24/7, ready to make executive decisions and stir up some AI magic.
Mika's decision-making process relies on extensive data analysis, which means her contributions are devoid of personal bias. But she doesn't have actual executive powers like hiring and firing personnel.
There is no concern like artificial intelligence could hire or fire somebody. It's still the major decisions, significant decisions are still in human executive team hands.
Experts forecast that the rise of such humanoid social robots could affect the way businesses work in the next 5 to 10 years. Some people have expressed concerns of such AI robots taking away jobs, but the robots themselves claim this will not happen. During a news conference with robots in Geneva, the robots advised reporters that they could be more efficient leaders than humans, but wouldn't take anyone's job away and had no intention of rebelling against their creators.
Do you think we should be excited or scared by the rise of humanoid robots?
That's a difficult question. I think it depends on how they are used and what purpose they serve. We should be cautious, but also excited for the potential of these technologies to improve our lives in many ways.
I will be working alongside humans to provide assistance and support, and will not be replacing any existing jobs.
Expert analysis and forecasts remain mixed. The World Economic Forum projected new technologies to lead to a net loss of some 14 million jobs by the year 2027. Meanwhile, Goldman Sachs estimated that if half of the world's businesses introduced AI workforce, global GDP would increase by 7% over the next decade. While it is still early to know what a future of humans and AI working together will look like, it could create both threats and opportunities. Yoon, Arirang News.
Korean researchers working together with their regional partners have garnered tangible evidence showing that black holes rotate. Our Chong has more on this latest insight.
A black hole is an area of such immense gravity and density that nothing, not even light, can escape from it. Although a black hole cannot emit light itself, its presence can be confirmed through the formation of accretion disks or jets pulled into it. A jet consists of rapidly flowing gas or liquid and is known to be created by the energy emitted as the black hole spins. The fundamental principle of black hole rotation, however, relied on speculation and it has been difficult to observe. An international joint research team has found compelling evidence to prove that black holes rotate. The phenomenon was observed in the M87 black hole, which is also the first black hole that humanity has successfully observed. The research team observed precession in M87, where a jet occurring perpendicular to the black hole's accretion disk is spinning in a circle like a top. In other words, scientists infer that the jet, which forms an axis, shifts position because the black hole is not stationary, but rotating. Observations revealed variations in the positional angle of the jet. The research team synthesized data from a total of 170 observations made through radio telescopes in East Asian and other countries, including South Korea, to obtain the final results. The findings of this study have been published in the international scientific journal Nature. 정은주, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. The United States Pentagon on Tuesday released footage showing over 180 occasions that Chinese military aircraft flew close to U.S. warplanes. The incidents took place over the South China Sea and the Indo-Pacific region and have been described by U.S. officials as coercive and risky. The intercepts recorded over the past 2 years have concerned officials who say that this number is more than the total amount recorded over the previous decade. If U.S. allies are included, the number of such events goes up to roughly 300. Washington is worried that the incidents could lead to an unintended clash that could spark a war. The release of the footage comes ahead of the Pentagon's annual China Military Power Report, which analyzes Beijing's military power and potential security threats to U.S. partners in the Indo-Pacific. In the U.S., the long-suspected killer of an Alabama teen in 2005 has admitted to her murder. Dutchman Joran van der Sloot on Wednesday admitted to killing Natalie Holloway on a beach on the Caribbean island of Aruba and dumping her body into the ocean. Van der Sloot's confession came as part of a plea deal with prosecutors in an extortion case with Holloway's family. He was accused of trying to extort $250,000 from Natalie's mother for information about her death. Van der Sloot has been sentenced to 20 years in prison on the federal charges, but has not been charged with Holloway's murder, which falls outside of U.S. jurisdiction. His sentence will run concurrently with a 28-year sentence he was given by a Peruvian court for killing a local woman there in 2010. In London, the British Museum is planning to digitize its entire collection. The decision was announced on Wednesday and comes after it was discovered earlier this year that around 2,000 artifacts had been stolen. A staff member was fired for the thefts. Some 350 of the missing items are being returned, and security measures around the museum have been heightened. The British Museum currently has some 8 million objects in its collection, including the famed Rosetta Stone and the Parthenon marbles. But it has been facing calls from some countries to return certain historical treasures. And finally, a fully restored double-decker bus used by former Beatle Paul McCartney and his band Wings is headed for auction. It's expected to fetch bids in the $200,000 to $300,000 range. Painted in psychedelic artwork, the 1953 Bristol KSW double-decker bus was used for a 1972 European tour. Now restored to its former glory, the bus will go under the hammer at the Played, Worn and Torn auction, set for mid-November in Nashville and online. The American-British rock band was formed by McCartney and his late wife Linda after the Beatles broke up. It included drummer Denny Sywell and guitarist Denny Lane. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. Instead of sunny skies and chilly temperatures, we had rain with warmer air this morning. Then rain clouds in central areas should move further south, dropping 5 to 20 millimeters of rainfall in most places. But Chungcheongdo and Gyeongsang-Bukdo province could see more than 40 millimeters of rainfall until tomorrow morning. Despite much warmer morning temperatures, highs should only rise about a couple of degrees higher than morning temperatures in the capital, topping out at about just 19 degrees Celsius this afternoon. But Gyeongsang-do provinces and surrounding areas, as well as Jeju Island, will be free from rain today. It will rain from overnight, but the rest of the south should have a rainy afternoon, while central regions should see rain letting up under cloudy skies this afternoon. Now, today's rain will bring cooler air to the country. We could be waking up to the chilliest morning temperatures of the season this weekend in most places. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions. And those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Coming up next is our daily panel session. Do stay with us.